Hello and welcome to Visiting Dugout, a Fans First Sports Network production. I'm Crystal O'Keefe from Southside Sox, and today I have Brandon Warne from Locked on Twins and Access Twins to discuss the next series with them. So, welcome, Brandon. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. I host Locked On Twins. I've written about the Twins in some form or fashion for a little over a decade. So before that, I was a fan. I've been a fan for a little over 30 years. So I definitely am well versed in the Twins and by proxy, the rest of the AL Central, which includes, of course, your beloved Chicago White Sox.
I don't know if beloved's the word right now,
No,
but
it might be a stretch. I realized as I was saying it, I was like, maybe take that one back.
it's okay. I do still love them, even if they cause me pain. So, what's going on in Minnesota right now?
Right now, it's raining actually, and everybody is celebrating the first round of the NFL draft, which I assume that is happening in Chicago too. They had two top picks and
Yeah.
crushed both of those. The Vikings had two first picks as well, not quite to the level of crushing it, but we definitely are happy. And so, a lot going on. Wolves in the playoffs, but it's a little gloomy in terms of weather, but everything else is looking good.
Good. I always ask personally how you graded the Twins off season. Like, what was the best move that you think they made?
They attacked the bullpen pretty aggressively. Uh, Instead of adding a starter, which I think we all hope they would. I mean, technically they did an Anthony DeSclafani, who probably won't ever throw a pitch in a Twins uniform. But they, given their self-imposed financial issues, again, that's a sore subject for a lot of Twins fans, and I get that. I think they did okay. Justin Topa not being healthy yet, he's on a rehab, will certainly change the complexion of this bullpen. And beyond that, it was they traded for some guys like Manuel Margot to kind of fill in the gaps in the roster when I think they could have just signed Michael A. Taylor. So they did a lot of things. There's a fair amount of movement, but it all was so late too that we're all just kind of sitting on pins and needles. Like, okay, are you guys going to do anything? You won a playoff game for the first time in nearly 2 decades, and yes, I know you don't have a TV deal in place, which eventually came to fruition, and we knew it would. Just didn't know how much money they would get out of it. And so they just kind of slow played the offseason. And that's not uncommon for this brain trust, but
Mhm.
it was underwhelming in the sense that they traded a beloved infielder in Jorge Polanco.
Yeah.
Granted, they got a good prospect and Justin Topa and a starting pitcher who they may have thrown in at number 5 in the rotation, but he got hurt. So they did a lot of like small things to kind of fix the margins. But at the same time, I don't really want to grade on a curve. So, like, I think a C plus is about the best you can give them.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. I know you're kind of riddled with injuries still, and that's been a very common theme with just about every single team so far. But if you have a healthy, at least core, do you feel confident about this season?
Yeah, I think, I always say you can't win the division in April, but you can lose it. And certainly, even being 11 and 13 is not ideal, or, being near 500 instead of over 500 at this point, because now you're looking up at Cleveland and you're basically looking up at everybody except for, and I'm sorry to say it, the Chicago White Sox.
No, it's
Uh,
okay.
so you have to make up that ground. But at the same time, when I look at each team and their players and depth and skill sets, I like the Twins and where they're at. I think
Mhm.
the Royals are solid. I think they made some moves. I think you can say the same about Detroit. But I think depth wise, when things start going sideways for teams health wise, as they have for the Twins already, and as they do over the course of a long season,
Mhm.
I think the Twins are better built to weather that storm. Trevor Larnach has come up. He was not on the radar to be a contributor until Matt Wallner started off dreadfully. And now Larnach has basically stormed the gates with a good start. And so that level of depth where they're going to their second and third guys, Austin Martin was a high draft pick, came over in a high profile trade, and he's a guy they were not leaning on. That depth will suit them well the rest of the season. Whereas I think, if Detroit were to lose a big player, and I don't want to name any names just because we don't want to put that out into the ether there. I just don't think those teams have the ability to withstand those things. But some teams just stay healthy too. So we'll see what happens. I'm confident in the Twins. And I just realized I took like 5 minutes to answer a very simple question.
No, you're completely fine. I will say this division is for anyone except for the White Sox to win. So you make a good point with the injuries and how that can just shift. I think the Guardians are the only other team that could weather that storm as well because they just develop pitching prospects out of nowhere. Um, but yeah, we will take a very short break and come back and actually talk about this new series. All right, and we are back. So we'll get into this series. The Twins just swept the White Sox in 4 games. Are they going to do it again?
Well, I think it'd be 3 this time, right? I mean,
Well, yeah.
it's semantics. It was as much as a 4-game sweep that you are the victor of. There were moments of frustration. The Twins had a couple spots where they stopped playing smart baseball. There was a throwdown on a double steal that allowed I don't remember who the runner was to walk home. But basically it made a game closer that didn't need to be close. And I didn't think, with all due respect to Michael Soroka, I did not think he pitched very well in the finale. 0 swinging strikes on almost 70 pitches.
Yeah.
And the Twins were just kind of eating out of the palm of his hand all the same until the last inning there where they hit a couple homers and got back into the game. There were moments of frustration. But I think as much as people want to say, oh, it's just the White Sox, the White Sox aren't very good. 1, they're still professionals or, major leaguers. 2, there's just something to be said about how you can change your vibe by winning ball games. And it doesn't matter if you beat the 27 Yankees or, the 1890 whatever Cleveland Spiders. It's winning games, fix it. It helps with the mood. It helps with the vibe. Suddenly you're not as, gripping as tight on the baseball or on the bat. And so we'll see if it matters. It's to get through May and be 500 after how it started would certainly be nice. And maybe the White Sox can accommodate that in this upcoming series. But the Twins are finding this soft spot in their schedule at a really, really good time. I'll just say that much. I don't know if they're going to sweep, but I kind of hope they do again.
Yeah, no.
No kind of about it. I hope they do again.
Yeah. Again, we are without 2 of our, run producers right now. And we've got a wacky outfield, and Gavin Sheets is the hottest hitter on the team. So that doesn't say great things.
You can dig back in my tweets, though, from the offseason. And I did say, one thing I asked was, hey, who do you think will break out in 2024 that you don't really have a reason for? Like, there's no underlying data that's really like, oh, this guy's stinging the ball and has nothing to show for it. Gavin Sheets was my guy. I don't know why he just looks like a ball player to me, and I think he's gonna sustain this, at least in the way of having a really nice season. Unfortunately, for a team that may not be any good at all.
Yeah, I think his dad's genes finally appeared, which I'm very thankful for, at least. So obviously we don't have starting pitching yet for this series. We're recording a little earlier. But what are your strengths about about your rotation? Woo, that was tough to get out.
I think the only thing I'm really interested to see is how the teams will face some of the same pitchers they did, like, making 2 straight starts against the same team. Sometimes there is a question of who that actually favors. And I think the consensus belief is the hitters, because you're seeing the same pitcher. It's a lot of different hitters. It's just one pitcher. So one thing I want to see is Joe Ryan. Okay, so Joe Ryan gave up a couple of homers and was very fastball heavy in his approach. And there were kind of 2 layers of thinking that I thought were there, because some people are like, well, why did he go away from the sweeper? Why did he go away from this and that? First of all, the first inning he came out and he was just gangbusters. He had, I think he struck out the side and looked great. And then he went fastball the rest of the night. I think he got Eloy with a sweeper, and then it was basically fastball the rest of the night.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's like, well, why did he do that? He gave up homers. He didn't have that great of an outing. Well, one, I think he realized if he goes fastball all night and it works, why go to the well anymore with a sweeper or anything else? Not as a disrespectful move, but just say, hey, prove to me you can do something with my fastball before I go to something else.
Yeah.
But as I thought about it more, he's facing the White Sox again. Right now, the projected schedule is Ryan against Crochet, Simeon Woods Richardson against Soroka, and then Bailey Ober against Chris Flexen. Now I got burned. I wrote the Fox Sports 1 notes for this last game, thinking that Chris Flexen was going to start, and I had to go and scrub all those out. The Twins may still get him if things go to plan, which they never seem to for either of these teams.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Joe Ryan, I'm eager to see if he changes it up, because I think that is what he was doing was, hey, listen, I'm going to face the White Sox again in 4 or 5 days. I know they're not a great team, but you still have to respect big league hitters enough to know that you should keep some tricks in your bag when you have to face them back to back. So that to me is something to watch. Simeon Woods Richardson, he's got the rotation spot vacated by Louis Varland, who just, he had good stuff, but he was just leaving the ball over the plate far too much. And he gives up homers in bucket loads when he's giving them up. So SWR having to not give up homers is about all he has to do to improve on that. And then Ober, they missed him because they pushed him back a day to face the Angels so that Woods Richardson could join the rotation on his regular day of rest. So there will be a lot of familiar faces pitching-wise in this matchup, regardless of what happens, because of how recently they've played each other.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to see just, how will Garrett Crochet change things up? Because, he has a lot of questions to answer this year. Can he stay healthy? Can he pitch well beyond the third, fourth inning? And I don't know if I trust Pedro Grifol to take care of him. It seemed weird that they sent him back out. He faced Manuel Margot, gave up a double, and then they lifted him. And I was like, well, then why did he go back out there in the first place? Like, what? Yeah. I have some questions about how Grifol is managing that I don't know I'll ever get answered, because I think he's going to be kind of made a scapegoat for this season.
Yeah, I've been saying that since I feel like day one. Although I thought he was going to be great at first, and then I got, I don't know, 10 games into that first season he managed, and I was like, oh no, this is not good at all, actually. But yeah, I feel like everyone at this point is kind of questioning his methods and his really poor bullpen management in general. There was all this like big deal about one of the games. It was Kopech came in the 8th, and they're like, well, why didn't you go back out in the 9th? He did perfectly fine. You send someone that is terrible out to close.
Yep.
And
they had Kopech out in the 8th, and he gave up that massive home run to Larnach in the, I don't know if it was the first or second game of the series, but it was just, there are people questioning, well, why was the closer, the de facto closer, in the 8th instead of the 9th? And like, there's so many layers to it. I feel like Kopech is in his Joe Kelly arc, where it's like, okay, it didn't work as a starter. He's going to be a reliever who throws the crap out of the ball. He's going to get bit by the homer a little bit, but in general, there's probably enough talent here to make it work. I do feel bad for Grifol in the sense that even if he pushes the right buttons, you still have, Wilson giving up runs when he's been one of their best, if not their best relievers this season. Brebbia is finally back from the calf, but now they're running him out there back-to-backs and stuff. I don't know. Again, with the calf, I don't know if back-to-backs matter that much. It's not an arm, so yeah. Hard to say. But like, he's so stuck. I will say this though, the one guy I like out there, I think Davy Garcia has some potential because the stuff is good. I thought if he can get the location down, if he can get that part of it, that might be the most, I don't know, I want to say most talented, because I think that's still Kopech, but he's in that conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't been upset watching him. He has done a pretty decent job, so he's got a lot to learn, but yeah.
I feel like we all have a lot to learn, so it's only fair that he does too.
It's very true, but yeah, we have a lot of fans just asking for basically Pedro's head on a plate, but nobody realizes that you need to take from the top. You got to cut the head off the snake. That's the only way any change is going to happen. So
Well, and I've seen people say, "Oh, Terry Francona," which don't get me wrong, it sounds like he wants to get back into the game next year once he's a little healthier.
Hmm.
But again, like he's going to have to want to take that job too, and we don't know what openings there will be. I mean, with all due respect to the White Sox, however many openings there are, that's probably going to be one of the least attractive, right?
Hmm.
So I mean, it's just Reinsdorf is so meddlesome in some ways and so hands off in others that it's just I don't know. Again, I'm trying to be respectful to the man, but like it's just it's not adding up for me as that being a job that Terry Francona would want as his swan song. But we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, I just actually did. It went out yesterday at the time of this recording. I asked people on Twitter what they would do if they got the job, like they're offered this managerial job. Gets is fired. What are
Yep.
you doing next? And there were so many people that were like, I'd be updating my resume. I would quit. I wouldn't start. I would clean house. But
Well, and Ken Rosenthal asked AJ Pierzynski if he'd want that job, and I think AJ in every way but directly was like,
no, it's a tough one right now. Nobody wants to be in that position.
yeah. I mean, and that's hard because it's one of the most desired positions in professional sports. Any sort of front office managerial job, you've got. I mean, if you put it on monster.com, you'll have a lot of applicants from a lot of people who are absolutely hysterical. But in the game too, even if you're the second in command for the Dodgers, is that as good as being the first in command for somebody else? Honestly, I don't think it is. But
Yeah.
you will have pause if you are, Andrew Friedman's right hand man, and the White Sox come calling. You might just say, didn't Jason McLeod do that with the Cubs for a long time? He's just like, nah, I'm going to stay here for a bit because
Yeah.
working with Theo's pretty good, and we're winning ball games and that stuff. I don't know. I mean, again, it's so hard to see where they go from here. And I've covered the Twins in some pretty hopeless times, but like they can't draft above 10th in this upcoming draft next year.
Yeah.
The prospects are decent enough. I mean, I like Nick Nastrini, and they have Colson Montgomery. Obviously, is the guy, but I feel like this is such a downer. I feel like I'm like taking the weather from outside here and vomiting it on your listeners. But
It's nothing they haven't heard already.
true.
So we'll move on from that sad state. Which player on the Twins do you feel is the biggest threat to the White Sox right now?
As far as like head to head, it's a good question because there's no immediate answer that springs to mind. I honestly think it might be Ryan Jeffers because he has been swinging it so well. He was an offense first catcher coming out of UNC Wilmington that they're like, don't know if he'll catch well enough to stay there. And then he was like a framing god, and the arm is decent enough, but really good behind the plate. And the bat was good, and then it was bad, and then it was good. Now it's good again. I just think he is kind of their ace in the hole where everybody knows how good Byron Buxton is. They might have Carlos, or can be, I should say, not he is right now. Carlos Correa might be back for that series. Royce Lewis, when he's healthy, is probably the most talented player on the roster. But when you start thinking about who are the guys that can beat you when you're not focusing on the studs,
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Jeffers is there. Edouard Julien is there. Once he starts getting the strike zone called like an established player does, and we saw it with Wyatt Langford on the Rangers too, where the strike zone for young players can really be something to navigate. Those are going to be the two guys, Julien and Jeffers, the JJ brothers. It's funny because the Vikings have a JJ quarterback and a JJ receiver now, so I guess it's all coming up Jays here in Minnesota.
Right.
Yeah, I think Jeffers and Julien are the ones to watch out for because, yeah, Byron Buxton can run, he can hit, and all that stuff. You know that, but the guys that beat you that you aren't expecting are guys like that.
Right. So we've talked about what your rotation might look like. We've talked about the great players. What are the keys then for the Twins to just take this series again?
It's really just cleaning up any of the small mistakes they make. I thought their plate approach against Soroka wasn't particularly good. But again, he even if he's not making his pitches, you still have to execute. And then there was also an inning where Max Kepler led off with a double. I think it was against Tim Hill.
Yeah.
And then the next three guys all had the ugliest plate appearances, maybe the three worst plate appearances for Twins hitters in the series. And there were 1, 2, 3, one after the other. It was Farmer, Vasquez, and I think Willie Castro in some order. They have these weird lapses where they just do things and you're like, you came into this season expecting to be a very good team. And even though you've dealt with injuries, it's like Willie Castro had a nice year. Kyle Farmer has been in the big leagues forever.
Yeah.
Vasquez has won 2 World Series, maybe not as a featured player, but he's been there. And so they just have these moments where it's like, have you guys played baseball before? And like even in the finale of the series, the offense, like I said, against Soroka wasn't very good. And then it kind of started catching traction with the wheels. If they can do that, there's really no reason for them not to sweep. It doesn't mean they have to for it to be a good series. And any road series is a difficult one. Angels, not a great team, but you still got to go in there and get Mike Trout out. Same thing with the Sox. You still got to go in and take care of business. So if the Twins play to their level and if Carlos Correa is back, that will help a lot as well.
Right. Do you think that perhaps they'll all be treated to the campfire milkshake if they win?
To me, that just looks like, and I don't mean to make light of this condition, but it looks like diabetes in a glass. I mean,
yeah,
crying out loud. It's like when you eat at Five Guys and you're like, your heart tells you have so many of these on your ticker, like if you're counting pitches in the dugout, you're the pitcher that's keeping track of pitch count. You have so many of those on your heart before your heart's like, nah, this is the same kind of deal. You can have a couple of these and then all of a sudden your body's like, do not want.
Yeah, they have another. I don't know. I haven't been up in the lounge this season, but they have another that's a churro milkshake, and it's basically like a horchata milkshake, and then they have this ginormous churro sticking out of the top.
That sounds incredible.
Delicious. Did I feel like I wanted to die about 20 minutes later? Yes.
The Twins have or at least they have, I don't know if they still do, a Bloody Mary in Herbeck's, which again, Kent Herbeck, if you remember him, big hulking first baseman, not necessarily known for his conditioning, but the Bloody was like, and they gave these out at the Twins media luncheon or media food tour one year. And I was like, whoa. And it's a big glass with their tomato juice, whatever. And then there's like a beef stick on a skewer and a cheeseburger on a skewer. And it's like a slider and it's cold because it's supposed to be like your hangover eating the next morning. But it was like the most gaudy thing you've ever seen. It was like $30. But it was hysterical. Like you have a slider on a skewer and beef stick, and then there was like a celery and all that. It's funny how ballpark food has gotten so unique and fun, but also like in no way a staple of any normal healthy person's diet.
No, I think it's the Rays. I was seeing the helmet full of soft pretzel bites, and you could get them like salt or you could get them sweet, and I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Sounds like pretzel day from The Office.
Yeah. Well, yesterday was pretzel day. Or no, today is pretzel day. Sorry.
Hey.
Fun that we're doing that. I hope Stanley's happy.
Usually not.
No. So do you actually have any fears heading into this series?
I mean, fears in the sense of like the start of this season was about as bad as you could imagine, health-wise, results-wise. And like it wasn't the easiest start. They had the Dodgers and but again, like you have to take care of business and they just haven't done that. But at the same time, if you lose 2 or 3 to the White Sox or God forbid get swept, yeah, I mean that's going to leave some sting. But at the same time too, like the White Sox aren't going to win like 9 games this year. They're still going to win 40-something games, maybe 50-something games. So they have to beat somebody. they beat Tanner Bybee earlier this year. They got to him for 5 runs in an inning, and everyone says, well, Simeon Woods Richardson could have pitched better than that. And it's like, what? Sometimes teams hit. The Twins owned Chris Sale for 1 whole year. And Chris Sale, that was at his peak, or like when he was really good. They owned him for like an entire year. These things happen. It's baseball. And sometimes we lose sight of the fact that baseball is just weird. It's just strange. And sometimes baseball things happen that we can't account for. We can't analyze more than just, well, that's a thing that happened. So if that happens, I mean, it'll, if they drop the series to the White Sox, it would be unfortunate. But that's baseball, Susan.
Yeah. Oh, bring up Chris Sale. I miss that man so much. I'm happy that he is thriving and has had a World Series ring since. But when I look at that trade, I think Kopech and Moncada have been hurt constantly.
And Moncada hurt right now. Kopech not starting. I mean, it's right in front of you. Like it's right there.
Yeah, good for him. Hope he's happy and healthy, like Olivia Rodrigo says.
Yep. Surviving, not thriving.
Yes. So moving away from the series, we'll just kind of end on this baseball season in general. If you have any fun predictions or hot takes or just anything.
Well, I'm scared of the Orioles, if I can be honest.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like that meme picture of all the white guys where they're all turning their heads and they look exactly the same in a baseball stadium. And it's like, that's what the lineup looks like when they give Cedric Mullins a day off, because it's the whitest kids but as a baseball team. And at the same time, though, like going and getting Corbin Burns was like exactly what they needed. They were even last year pitching, they were not pitching rich, let's say. And it feels like every week, though, they can bring up another prospect. It's Jordan Westberg, and it's Colton Cowser, and then was it Heston Chersted last week. The fact that they've got some pitching now, and that bullpen, even with Batista out, they got Kimbrel and Cano, former Twin Cano. No shortage of people angsty about that here. I'm all in on the Orioles, and I'm also saying, hey, if the Twins meet them in the playoffs, 1, that means the Twins made the playoffs, and 2, hopefully it's in like the LCS, because man alive, they're dangerous and they're nasty and they are so good. And also, sorry, one quick one. I do not have any idea what to make of Houston, because holy smokes, they stink so bad.
Yeah, and I feel bad because Jose Abreu is there.
Mm-hmm.
I loved Jose Abreu. He's my age. People my age shouldn't be playing baseball anymore if you're just not. And he's had a terrible start, and all these fans are just hating on him. And I feel so bad, and I want to be like, well, that's why we say August Abreu, because in the cold months he's terrible.
Yep.
But it's just been especially painful to watch.
That's me with Carlos Santana, who just turned the age that I am now, same birth year and everything. And he off to a tough start, but he did hit a homer in the finale, and who knows, maybe things are turning around, or maybe he'll be gone in the next few weeks. Who knows? I don't think that'll happen, but yeah, it's always weird when people in your age group are pros in the first place. For me, it was like when BJ Upton debuted, it was like, holy cow, someone in my general age is a big leaguer. And now it's like, oh man, Phil Hughes and Trevor Plouffe have been retired for like 5 years now. And it just shows that Father Time comes for us all and shows no mercy.
It's funny though, because Lance Lynn, also my age, he grew up, I don't know, about 20 miles west of where I did. So I saw him play in high school, and his team won that championship. And I'm watching him, and then last season it was just not good for him. It looked like this is it. You're washed. Let's go. And then he comes back, and he's great again on another team. And I'm like, again, you were my age.
Do you know my Lance Lynn story?
No.
Oh, how much time do you have?
Yep, please share.
It's okay. So he was on the Twins in 2018. It was a colossally disappointing year. And so you can write the crap out of stories covering bad teams because there's just so much there. So on Father's Day that year, I had 2 story ideas, and the first one, I talked to Ryan Presley and Logan Morrison about their dads. Both of them died right around the time they made the big leagues. Great story. I lost my stepdad when I was 8, so I felt comfortable asking these guys to talk about it. Turned out really well. I read it the other day, and I was like, yeah, I wrote the crap out of that one. But then I was like, all right, here's another angle I want to pursue. What's it like to be a father and a big league player? Because there's a lot of Twins players who had kids that would be around on Sundays. It was a very normal thing. So I go to Ari Adrianza, and he's like, oh, she's the apple of my eye, and she's a dancer and whatever. Beautiful answer. And I go to Bobby Wilson. He's like, yeah, my kids are here with me until school starts, and I love them to death and whatever. And Zach Duke is this, and Addison Reed talking about his daughter being a goofball and all that. So I'm like, man, this story is going to turn out great, right? So I go over to Lance Lynn because I've seen him with his daughter playing with, I think it was Zach Duke's kids on Sunday was like family day with the Twins. I think it still is. And so I'm like, hey, Lance. And I had seen Lance's interviews in St. Louis. He was hysterical. He was funny. And I thought he and I are going to get along great. We kind of look alike, not exactly, but kind of. And I like his humor. And it did not start off well. He was not happy to be in Minnesota. Anyway, because he signed so late and didn't get the contract he wanted. And I go up to him and I'm like, hey, man, I'm working on this story. So what's it like to be a father in the major leagues? And he goes, I'm divorced. I never get to see my kids. I'm like, oh my God. And like, do you ask a follow-up? Do you say, I'm sorry? Do you walk away? I'm like, I don't remember. I was in such a mental headspace of like, did you ever watch Community when Troy meets the Reading Rainbow guy?
Yeah.
I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he's like, that's exactly what I went into, just like a catatonic state where I was like, well, and when I was on a podcast where I could swear, I definitely said, you can see me mouthing it, but I was just like, oh man, that felt so bad. So I was like, well, see you later, like kind of on Dumb and Dumber. And I was like, well, at least I know he's going to be traded in 6 weeks and I'll still be here after that. It was funny though. He comes back with the Rangers the next year or year after, and it was like the All-Star break, so everybody's leaving, whatever, and I'm standing outside the Twins clubhouse, and he walks by and kind of gives me a nod, and I'm like, are we cool now? Are we cool? He did not have a good time in Minnesota, and I probably contributed to that.
You just, well, he's happily married now.
But I'm just out here living my best life, trying to ask baseball players questions, and I completely bring up a very sore subject. Yeah, it sounds like he's very happily married, and he's appearing on, I think, the podcast that AJ Pierzynski has. Seems to be thriving, which is great for him. And I think we could be friends in real life, but I don't think he's interested. So if you're listening, Lance, I'm sorry.
Yeah, get through his wife. She's hilarious. I follow her on Instagram and TikTok, and she's just wonderful. And I still have a photo of him saved where he's in like this Lisa Frank rainbow suit for her daughter's birthday party.
Amazing. Yeah, I think he was just in a tough spot. I bet, if he's going through what he told me, and then, you sign a 1-year deal in a city you probably don't expect to be in, things aren't great. And then you pitch poorly besides. It happens. It happens.
Poor Lance. At least he's also thriving now.
And paid besides.
Yes. All right. Well, we can wrap this one up. But again, before we leave, please just remind everyone where we can find you.
Well, Locked On Twins is available wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. We do it very similar to what you're doing here. So keep up the good work. And then I always tell people at the beginning of our show that you can unfollow me on Twitter at Brandon_WARNE. And we have a lot of fun. Actually, Chicago type is my co-pilot, Dave Brown. So he's been tremendous. He's such a good guy, and very hysterically funny besides. So we have a lot of fun for 32 minutes every single time, because we always use up every single second allotted by our network.
There you go. Yeah, I feel like we have a ton of mutuals already. So if you don't actually follow him, he's pretty funny, you
Yeah.
know. All right. Well, again, thank you so very much. Best of luck in this series. You probably don't need it, but I'll say it anyway.
All good. Well, hey, be good.
Yeah. All right. Thank you again.